This is a demonstration on how to use a cutting knife. So you need to get a cutting mat to put your piece of paper on, and a cutting knife, a craft knife. Now you'll need to notice that this craft knife has a ratchet system that enables you to push the knife out. Do not extend the knife more than 2 segments on the blade, because this knife is designed to break the segments when it becomes blunt, and if you extend it too far, there's a chance that there'll be too much pressure on the knife and the segments will break off and could go somewhere that you don't want it to, like in your face. So in order to keep the knife stable and in one place, to lock it, you need to pull this clip out so that it's separated. That stops the blade from going back into the knife. So this, click it in, you can move it when it's together, pull it apart, and it locks the blade. Now you need to be using a metal ruler. It's better to use a metal ruler, although you can use a plastic ruler to cut straight edges. So I'm just going to place the metal ruler along the straight edge that I'd like to cut carefully. Now I'm going to hold the knife. There's various ways that you can hold the knife to make sure it's steady. One way is to hold it so that this end part is in the palm of your hand and that you can press down like this, straight. Keep the blade at 90 degrees to the cutting mat. Don't have it at an angle because it will rip and tear the paper. So keep the blade at 90 degrees, and you also need to have it so that the end of the blade, which has got an angle on it, is touching the paper like this. So I'm going to keep it at 90 degrees to the paper. I'm going to press the blade up against the ruler carefully, and cutting straight down, I'm going to, pulling it against the ruler, try to cut a straight edge. There we go, like that, and stop. Now in order to cut a curved edge, you might need to turn your cutting mat at an angle so that it's better to cut the curve as you're pulling it into your body. You need to always cut away from your hands, but to cut a curve, you pull the knife and turn it carefully at an angle away from your hands into your body. If you want to move the mat around to make the angle more convenient and easy to cut, you can then just move the mat to rotate it around so that you, or the paper, or just move the paper around so that you can cut it. Now I can't see where to stop, so you might just need to have an idea or make an extra mark on the paper so that you can see where to stop. Now in order to cut this curved shape, I need to cut freehand. I'm just going to put the cutting mat back. There we go. And just move the paper. I need to cut freehand with the knife, so I'm going to be cutting away from my hands, and I'm going to hold the knife, pressing down like this onto the paper, and move my elbow and whole hand slowly so that it cuts around the curve. Now at this point it gets really difficult, my hand is at an awkward position, so I'm now going to move the paper so that everything is straight and it's better angle for cutting. So I'm now going to cut carefully and carry on cutting, pressing at a sort of medium to heavy pressure, and you just stop and turn the paper again. And if I want to carry this on, I'll turn it at the most convenient angle to cut. Now, sometimes when you're cutting small shapes, you might find it easier to hold it a bit more like a pen, but it can make it quite awkward for you to cut. It doesn't really matter how you hold it, but as long as it's steady. Now, holding it like this, more like a pen, you might not get as much pressure onto the blade, but you might find that's okay. But whatever keeps it from moving around, just practice to see whether you prefer to hold it like this or like this, to see which is the better way of holding it. Now, if you find that your blade is blunt, we'll need to break off one of these segments, and this knife is designed to do that. You pull the end out, and it has a little slot in the end which you put over the blade, and then you twist and break it. But mine doesn't need to be broken off, and you should only do that and let your teacher do that. You should not do that on your own. So if you're using these at school, tell your teacher and let your teacher do that, so they can dispose of this sharp blade somewhere else. If you don't cut all the way through, sometimes it's better not to pull and rip the paper. You just have to go over it again really carefully, just to make sure you've caught the paper, cut the paper in the corners to finish cutting the design. So don't pull the paper if you haven't quite cut all the way through on all of the sides.